All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. Welcome to all of you who ventured out to be here in the sanctuary on this day that is unexpectedly chilly after yesterday. I think yesterday I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. It's 84 degrees out there. This morning, my daughter's in shorts and I'm like, it's 43, kid. Hands on. Welcome to all of you who chose to be with us on Zoom, and welcome to all of you who are watching this later. With all the choices we have for what to do on Sunday mornings, I'm glad you chose to be with us. For over 50 years, the UUFP has been a liberal religious voice in the Pottstown area. As UUs, we believe that facts and faith are not an either-or proposition. We believe that we can and should honor the wisdom of the past, even as we acknowledge the past does not have all the answers. And that one of the ways that we can acknowledge the past and acknowledge the lessons that our ancestors have taught us is by not repeating the past. We believe that there are still plenty of questions out there to explore, but perhaps most importantly, we believe that there is no one who is outside the circle of justice and compassion. We hope your spirit and your heart and your mind are refreshed as we commit ourselves once again to our 7 guiding principles, with love at the center. We come together this Sunday morning and every Sunday morning, not because we share a creed, but because we share a promise to support one another on our spiritual journeys. Our services are different each week, but the loving kindness we share with each other is always the same. So whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are, we are glad to have you with us. And now we have a moment for announcements. If you have an announcement, please come on up. You can use this microphone because the other microphone buzzes.
John, you have a water softener and neutralizer. So I want everyone to drink as much water as they can today.
Some use the mic because the people at home are hearing all right. They use the mic today. So, although if I'm behind the mic, you can't see my Phillies jersey that I have on. So, maybe you still can. So, go Phils. But the reason I'm up here and the reason I'm wearing a Phillies jersey is because today we are kicking off our pledge drive. And the theme of this year's pledge drive I'm calling Stepping Up to the Plate. And I think that there are so many great examples of people in this fellowship that are stepping up to the plate. And I'm just kind of looking out and I'm looking at the number of faces here. I see John and Kay, who basically define stepping up to the plate. We have Kay's piano playing that was a hidden talent that I had no idea that she even had. But when we needed a piano player, Kay has done that. I'm looking at John right now. On my way into the building, was it last week or week before? He's up on a ladder and he's replacing the lights in the back parking lot. He found one from the house that he's working on at his own home that he's not going to use anymore, and saved us money by reusing that and getting it put up. How much money do you think that would have cost us if we didn't have a John Price out there on the ladder? I do think he looked a little green out there on the ladder, but probably no more green than I would be. I could just keep going on and on. We've got people that have stepped up to the plate for nursery and childcare. I keep looking at the plates that Sarah brings for coffee hour each and every time she comes. That has all the homemade goodies and fruits and just fantastic stuff. People that are doing the AV back there, stepping up to the plate. So I see Rick back there, and he's got a cadre of folks that are stepping up as well. So that's our theme, stepping up to the plate. And one of the things that I wanted to mention as well is that all of you, through your contributions, have really been stepping up to the plate this year. And I've got in my bag of tricks here. You're not going to be able to see this from where you're sitting, but I'm going to leave a whole stack of these on the back table. So when you turn in your hymnal today, you can pick up a copy and have a look at this. So this is basically in graphical form, and I've taken the numbers off because we just don't want our numbers kind of floating out there for absolutely everyone to see. But it gives you a general sense as to how we're doing financially. And the picture is really, it's really strong, it's really bright. Some of the highlights are that, we're doing really well with our pledges from last year. So great job, everybody, with that. We're tracking at about 96 or 97% where we expected to be. In our checking account, what you're going to see is that the balance is at 152% where we started our fiscal year 8 months ago. So it's a great job with that. Now, much like when we spoke last year, I want to throw some caveats in there because, people may say, well, if we're doing so strong financially, how come you're up here asking for money? And the reason for that is because there's so much that we are doing and it requires money, and there's so much that we want to continue to do. And, I'm seeing the new ideas, flowing in. I'm looking at Chad right now, who's like a great source of new ideas. Monica, she bleeds new ideas. There's all of these, Sam as well. I don't know how many emails I've gotten from him lately about things that he wants to work on, with John's help, on facilities and buildings. So, facilities and building, is an area that whenever you do something, it costs not just usually a little bit of money, but it costs a significant amount of money. So it's good to have that money to be able to take care of our building and take care of our facilities and continue to improve things. Our programming is not free as well. So as we want to continue to have really good programming, that's money that we want to have available in our checking account for things like that. And social outreach, is also something that's fundamental to our fellowship. And we want to make sure we've got the money available to do those things that we need to do. So we're stepping up to the plate. We're doing great. Let's continue to do great with our pledge drive. So what I have for you, in addition to the sheets that I just showed you, are a couple of things. I've got new, revised, approved pledge cards that I'm also going to leave on the back table near where the envelopes go. I need to head out today before the service is over. So if you could please either drop them in the office or hand them to Linda. Linda said that she would be helping with that later today. So that would be great. And I also have bribes for people, as we have done in the past. So anybody who turns in a pledge card today may help themselves to a giant bar of chocolate.
Locally sourced.
That's right. Only the best, right? And so I know for a fact that there's going to be, 20, 30, 50 pledge cards get turned in today. And I only have 4 chocolate bars with me. So if I don't have a chocolate bar for you today, I will have more next week. And we'll use the honor system. And, if you took one today, don't claim that you didn't take one. That's against some principle. I'm not sure which one. And then finally, I've gotten a lot of questions lately about like what are ways that we can contribute to UUFP, and I've got a cheat sheet that I'm going to leave out in the back as well. And basically, it kind of summarizes whether you want to leave something in the collection basket. There's a couple of different online options that we've got for setting up contributions. So this cheat sheet is just meant to kind of give you sort of that nudge and a few of the key details. Get started with that. If you're more of an electronic donating person rather than a paper-based donating person. So this will be in the back here as well. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to stop because I've stolen already too much of JD's time today. Thanks.
Good morning, I'm Sam. I'll be brief because I'll be talking again later. With the approval of the board, we've engaged a lawn mowing service that will start toward the end of April when the grass is really high. They do a good job. I've also, somewhat with the board's approval, but on my own approval, engaged the same lawn service to come in and clean up the flower beds right around the church and mulch them. I know that we'd like to do that, but I think we get a good cleaning and done, that will be hopefully be better able to maintain it since we only take care of it twice a year. A church member has offered to pay for that, so that will be taken care of. It's not that expensive because I'm not the quote myself. So anyways, that's it. And you'll hear more from me later.
Like the flower beds won't need to be like 100% filled out. I came a couple times to do it and I haven't come in a while, but every time it's like, where, how does it grow this fast? So now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. He needs no introduction. He's one of our favorites. JD Stillwater moves and inspires thousands of people all over North America and the globe with science-centered messages of awe and deep kinship, from Chautauqua Institution to Sinai and Synapses Fellowship, to the Parliament of the World's Religions, to academic conferences and civic clubs. With a gift for making difficult science concepts graspable for average people, JD continues his decades-long career as a science educator, sharing insights from mainstream conventional science as a source of unifying inspiration from stages, webinars, pulpits, and workshops. He offers insights from how nature works that help us discern who we are and what our place in the world is. Join me in welcoming JD. Welcome.
Thank you, Emily. Today it's going to be a little less about science, and I'm going to tell some stories, and you'll see. Our opening words: poop. Poop is a big part of today's service. So we don't like poop. I want to open the service this morning with a poem by Marge Piercy. She writes, "We must actually." Let me go back 10 seconds. You know those little button on movies where you can just go rewind 10 seconds? Poop and peace is what I want to focus on this morning. The larger events happening in our world over the last couple of months had me really thinking about peace and reconciliation. And that reminded me of a story. So the sermon will be built around that story. So Marge Piercy's poem. We must sit down and reason together. Perhaps we should sit in the dark. In the dark, we could utter our feelings. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. In the dark, we could not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say. No one would speak more than twice. No one would speak less than once. Thus, saying what we feel and what we want, what we fear for ourselves and each other in the dark. Perhaps we could begin to listen. The women must learn to dare to speak. The men must learn to bother to listen. The women must learn to say, I think this is so. The men must learn to stop dancing solos on the ceiling. After each speaks, she or he will say a ritual phrase. It is not I who speaks, but the wind. Wind blows through me. Long after me is the wind. Marge Piercy. I understand that Chloe, there she is going to light the chalice this morning. She's an old pro. We light this candle of peace within our chalice of welcoming community, a flame of unity within diversity, the fire of our courage in seeking to understand one another. Opening hymn is number 100, Peace Like a River. And I don't, do you have it? Okay. Not sure if the word would be on the screen or if you they will. I want the young and the young at heart to come join me down front.
Not gonna work.
Not gonna work now. See some more young and heart people out there. I know you're there. Well, I'm gonna address this question. Oh, I forgot. To everybody, not just the young part. And the question is, have you ever been in a disagreement or a fight with like a friend or someone in your family, but you were in one today? Huh. Okay, anybody else? Matt? Your friend on the bus wasn't listening when you were talking, and you got kind of didn't feel good about that, and you started fighting. Okay, you raised your hand. Okay, so at school, when you're trying to make decisions as a big group, sometimes there are disagreements and there's some arguing back and forth. Yeah, cool. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have 2 kids.
There are disagreements.
My daughter doesn't like her school dress code and her skirts are always too short.
Disagreements about policies in larger groups like school, yeah, all right. So now I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but how do those disagreements or fights get resolved? Like, if you're willing to share. How do you, like, do you just end up hating the people you disagreed with forever?
Maybe walk away.
Giving it some time, taking a pause until those like tense feelings dissipate and you can talk more evenly. Okay? Cooling down. Talk it out, yeah. How about with your kids? I am putting it on the
Consistency, honesty, but also not like rule of law, like they have to have say and. You gotta show them that their voice matters and what we're doing. There's some things that we're doing because all that sense of it.
Yeah,
Other things are, there's like a lot of compromise.
yeah, so
And also ice cream works is great.
eat less egg and ice cream. Yeah, well, many years ago, I did something that not very many people do. I walked all the way across the North American continent. And I did that with a group of other people, a pretty large group of people. We were walking for peace. We were walking to convince the United States government to not have so many nuclear weapons. And this is, I'll pass this around. This is a picture of me in my tent on that walk. And the funny thing is about this walk is that even though everyone there, hundreds of people, were walking across the United States for peace, we had disagreements too, just like you were talking about at school. Because, we were a large group of people trying to do something together. And there was one disagreement in particular that I'm going to tell the adults about during the sermon. And I think it's kind of ironic. It's kind of funny in a way that people who were doing this major effort for peace ended up fighting with each other about how to do this thing for peace. And we stumbled on something that I think is just really amazing. And what it boils down to is listening to each other, just like many of you said. So, it's something I try to remember whenever because disagreements happen. We're gonna disagree with other people, right? Or even sometimes they're gonna escalate to the point of fighting. And I try to remember that there are things we can do to take the pause, to just wait, let the feelings settle down, and then listen to each other to get past the disagreement. Any further thoughts? All right, thanks for coming down. Are we going to classes today? Okay. All right.
So now is the time in our service where we take a couple minutes to talk about coming up to the plate and passing the plate. So as you know, our fellowship is independent, and the UUA does not give us money. We give the UUA money. So we're supported just by one another, like a real community, every community supported by one another. So if you have something to spare, then please support us. And if this is your first time visiting the congregation, please know that your presence is gift enough. It is given with love and received with gratitude.
I have a responsive reading this morning that I understand was actually written by Mohandas K. Gandhi. And so I'll read a section, and then if you will join me in saying together, it is possible to live in peace. Let's do that once together. It is possible to live in peace. If someone with courage and vision can rise to lead in nonviolent action, the winter of despair can, in the twinkling of an eye, be turned into the summer of hope. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence is not a garment to put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence, which is a quality of the heart, cannot come by an appeal to the brain. It is a plant of slow growth, growing imperceptibly but surely. It is possible to live in peace. If a single person achieves the highest kind of love, it will be sufficient to neutralize the hate of millions. It is possible to live in peace. If we are to reach real peace in the world, if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. It is possible to live in peace. The future depends on what we do in the present. It is possible to live in peace. As you now know, or may have known previously after the children's message, in 1986, I walked from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. on the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament. It was a pivotal year in my life in a lot of ways, which is why, it keeps kind of coming up in my work today. And one of the lessons I learned that year and seem to have to keep learning goes by the shorthand, at least between Ann and I. She censored her best, by the way. Goes by the shorthand Manure warehouse. But you need some background before I can even begin to tell the story. The first organizer of the Great Peace March was a nonprofit called Pro Peace. It was short for People Reaching Out for Peace. And they attracted me with promises of 5,000 people living and traveling in a vast tent city of 5,000 people in 2,500 tents, walking from LA to DC en masse with hot showers every morning and rock star concerts every night. And, overwhelming impact. This was going to be a big, big deal, right? Well, we walked out of Los Angeles March 1st, 1986, on schedule, but with only about 1,200 people out of the hoped for 5,000. We had a crippling lack of liability insurance, and Pro Peace was staggering under $500,000 in debt that they hoped they could fundraise once we were on the road, once we got on the way. 2 weeks later, as we walked into the little town of Barstow, anyone been to Barstow, California? I'm seeing a few nods. Yeah, not much there. Barstow is right on the edge of the Mojave Desert, and Pro Peace came out from their headquarters in LA to announce that they were bankrupt, and they told us all to go home. Well, about 2/3 of us did go home. What remained was a really diverse and dedicated group, and we all did what we could to keep this thing alive. So the skilled mechanics removed essential parts from the trucks that pulled our kitchen and our porta potties, thereby stymieing the repo men, which descended on our campsite, trying to get all this stuff as part of the bankruptcy. The attorneys among us sought an injunction against further repossessions, arguing that 400 people needed that stuff to survive our forthcoming walk across the Mojave Desert, and they quickly cobbled together a new 501c3. Those with commercial kitchen skills, including me, made food. Musicians played in local bars for tips that went to the march, and so on. The shower trucks got repossessed. And the media further relieved us of any glamour we might have had with gleeful headlines about the death of the Great Peace March. Nevertheless, we persisted. And 2 weeks later, we left Barstow and out into the desert as a lean, scrappy, and somewhat stinky band of 400 activists that were determined to make it, to walk to Washington, D.C. for global nuclear disarmament. Why am I telling you this now? Well, the March community remains close, maybe about as close as soldiers who have experienced combat together. And as I said, we were a pretty diverse group, although most of us remain committed to nonviolence, even now, almost 40 years later. And we are mostly progressive politically, even after 40 years. However, 40 years have gone by and some things changed. I'm not sure why, but some marchers have come to see me as emblematic of something. And so they write to me on Facebook Messenger. And until the last couple of years, those conversations were always pretty respectful, even in strong disagreement about politics. But recently, 2 of those conversations with Peace March buddies became extremely rude and crude, violent, and from my perspective, completely unhinged from reality. And after a while, I got tired of being called horrible names in spite of being respectful myself as well as I could. So I put these 2 guys together in a group chat on Messenger. And I admit that I was partly motivated by entertainment value. But I honestly didn't know if they would mostly disagree or agree with each other. I just knew that they were both passionate to the point of vehemence. Here's an excerpt of what ensued. Person A. I am too enlightened to be poisoning myself with that deranged, delusional, and satanically insane megalomaniac political bull beep. Got sublime soul, self-sovereign autonomy. I don't play brainless, satanic political games. Person B. I hate what you stand for, and I can choose to do so. I now clearly know your politics. We are diabolically opposed. The Democrats said that if Trump is elected, there will be civil war. Bring it on, Marxists. Well, this kind of talking past each other continues for pages and pages. One claiming to be so spiritually enlightened that he's above all politics, while flinging violent insults at everyone who isn't so enlightened by his judgment. And the other one labeling anyone who criticizes Donald Trump as a Marxist and an enemy he is eager to gun down. Now, I cherry-picked those two excerpts I read to you to avoid the dozens of F-bombs and for being marginally intelligible. And of course, you can't see the entire sentences in all caps and 5 exclamation points in a row. Now, to be fair, there may be some mental illness involved here, but it kind of got to me how we had gotten to this point in a community of people who walked together for 9 months for peace. And more importantly, I was dogged by the question of how to heal this. How do we heal this? The thing is, I already know. I know because of something I witnessed and participated in on the march, in a warehouse full of manure. Once we were out of the desert and over the Rockies, the marchers became deeply polarized around one particular issue that today, decades later, feels kind of petty and insignificant, but it was a big deal at the time. So in the beginning, we had all walked together from campsite to campsite with banners and flags and lots of fanfare, just as Pro-Peace had sort of designed it. But as the days and the miles wore on, the late night campfire talkers and the early to bed, early to rise folks naturally fell into 2 distinct patterns. So the early risers would get up with the sun, eat breakfast when it was served, and leave with the flags at the regular time to walk to the next site. And in my memory, that was about half of us. The other half got up whenever they woke up and caught the end of breakfast or just skipped it and hit the road when they felt like it. And this arrangement was great for preventing long lines at the porta potties in the morning and at the water trailer, and of course at the kitchen truck for breakfast. And it spread out the workload for those whose job that day was loading the trucks that carried our tents and our duffels and stuff like that, which was especially helpful when it was raining. On the roads, it stretched the column of marchers out to miles long, visible throughout the day, but it also meant that drivers and local people along our route saw these sporadic clumps of people walking, no banners or flags or really anything to explain who we even were, why we were walking through their county. It also meant that the people serving lunch at the halfway point had to wait for a long time, which then delayed their cleanup and whatever else they wanted to do that day. So we began to split into these 2 polarized factions. Those who thought we should march together in a unified group, and those who thought each marcher should have the freedom to walk when it was best for them. And we called our ever-moving encampment of tents Peace City. And early on, the board of directors, the newly formed board of directors, had delegated most decisions to the Peace City Council, which was elected periodically by the marchers. Very democratic, of course. Well, at some point, the early risers brought a proposal to city council that would require everyone to start walking at the appointed time in the morning. And that didn't go over all that well, as you might imagine. Now, city council's habit was to seek consensus whenever possible. So heated discussions about this particular issue ended by tabling the motion to the next meeting, where more marchers showed up and the discussion was more heated and so on, until the entire community was factionalized. It got more and more heated until it came to dominate our conversations. And some people talked about just going home. Now, if this doesn't yet sound like American politics today, let me add that there was a bit of a generational split too. The Walk Together crowd tended to be older retirees and veterans of the 1960s civil rights era, while 20-somethings like me tended to favor walking when you want. Well, one afternoon in eastern Colorado, at the height of this political storm, a real storm, complete with hail and tornado warnings, forced us to abandon our half-set-up tents and make a run for a sturdy metal roof building that stood next to the soggy farm field where Peace City was being set up for that night. Relieved, all 500 of us at that point ducked inside this metal building, only to have our noses inform us that it was a storage facility for fertilizer, the natural kind. They had manure from pigs and cows and chickens and bats, you name it, all in these separate piles, each accessible by front loader. So these were not small piles. The piles were warmer than warm. Some were steaming. Just try to imagine what it was like in that building. But, you know, it was better than a surprise real-life casting in the roles of Dorothy and Toto, right? So we milled around in there as the storm raged outside. We realized it might be a while, but most of us were unwilling to sit anywhere, you know, in that building. And mind you, some of us didn't smell a whole lot better than those piles, but still. So at some point, someone got an idea and they just set up a microphone on a stand. And they said something like, if you'd like to share your thoughts on the question of walking together, here's a microphone. Let's agree not to heckle, just get in line to speak, and otherwise, let's just listen to each other. 2 minutes per speaker. Well, people did get in line. Oh boy, did they line up to talk about this. And as hailstones roared down on the metal roof, people raged and stormed their anger and indignation into that microphone. It's a march, not a meander. Why the hell did you come on this if you aren't willing to make an impact? And how dare you try to legislate how I approach my activism? Hurtful things had been said, and there was a lot to express. It was both painful and cathartic. A lot of people would fill their 2 minutes and immediately get right back in line. Kind of like politics today. And both perspectives had valid points. You know, we had come on this march to make an impact, and walking all strung out was diminishing that. On the other hand, people didn't give up a year of their lives just to be micromanaged by a bunch of control freaks, right? And besides, walking strung out allowed for deeper conversations with people that we met along the sidelines and over breakfast in diners and over coffee in coffee shops along the way. And many more arguments were marshaled by both sides that day. Too many to describe here. But after a while that seemed like forever, the lines started to get a little bit shorter. And people started conceding points that they had previously rejected. The late walkers acknowledged that it wasn't actually too much to ask that they show up for breakfast, right? Although they did not like the proposal to make it a requirement that they do that. And the Walk Together folks conceded that there were some logistical and tactical advantages to walking spread out. And each of those little concessions created just a tiny bit of political elbow room for actually considering the merits of the other perspective. So the line got shorter and shorter until there were thoughtful pauses between speakers. And by the end of the hailstorm outside, the political storm inside had ended too. And the solution was obvious to everyone. No one proposed it. No one created it. No one enforced their will on anyone else. It was self-evident what we would do. We would choose to walk together when we walked through towns and cities, and we would walk however we each wanted through the rural countryside, city mode and country road. It was so perfect. We wondered why we hadn't thought of it sooner. We couldn't have, because we were stuck in our positions. That day in a manure warehouse somewhere on the vast plains of eastern Colorado, I learned that authentic sharing and open-hearted listening is the key not only to peace, but also to better solutions. Sometimes conceding the small truths we can admit in the other's perspective gives both parties the grace to seek another way. Some way that isn't possible while entrenchment rules the debate. Note that the resolution to the march's divisive question of how to walk each day required no rules, no city council decisions, no vote, no enforcement. It was obvious. Let me suggest that there may be similar solutions to questions like abortion and immigration. For example, liberals like me could admit that abortion isn't a universal good, and that it would be better for people to have all the tools they need to prevent unwanted pregnancies in the first place. If pro-lifers could concede that the goal is to minimize the number of abortions rather than to control and punish sexuality, we could work together, I think, to truly make abortion safe, legal, and rare. I think pro-choice folks could emphasize the "and rare" part much more than we have. Are we sharing and listening vulnerably? Is it even safe to these days? Can we trust that our listening and sharing won't be weaponized? And that being vulnerable might give permission for the other side to soften a bit too? I'm not sure. Is there enough goodwill, enough common cause to take shelter together in this room full of manure and just talk? Can we handle the political stench long enough to really hear one another? Are we curious enough to rise out of our own manure piles and consider new options that might benefit everyone? Manure can smell bad, but the nutrients it contains are tremendously valuable to farmers. And poop plays a huge role in the evolution and sustainability of ecosystems, from fish poop to bird guano to buffalo chips, right? I don't know how big a role the manure in that building played that day, but I can't help but notice that the combination of the storm and the manure forced us all into an uncomfortable context, one where we didn't have a whole lot of choice but to talk and listen. Are we there yet in American politics? It seems to me that the pace of threatening change is like the storm, and our social media landscape is like the piles of manure, disgusting and stinky, but rich with potential. We used them better. After days of vitriol between my two fanatical friends on Messenger, I chimed in to remind them about that day in the manure warehouse. One of them conceded that they could be a better listener and started to make moves in that direction. The other one continued to insist that we were both his enemies and that anyone not in support of Trump is by definition a Marxist and therefore deserving prison or worse. As I said, mental illness may be a factor. I probably can't achieve reconciliation with everyone, right? The question is, am I able to engage my curiosity enough to listen compassionately? Listening doesn't imply agreement. In these times, authentic, earnest listening may be all we have. I think that's a spiritual practice. The best part of the story is that on November 15th, 1986, the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament walked into Washington, D.C., 20,000 strong and on schedule. We had crossed endless cornfields in country mode, enjoying the scenery and good conversations and leisurely singles and pairs. We had marched in a loud, compact, unmistakable column through the small towns like Coralville, Iowa, but also down the glass canyons of big ones like Chicago, Cleveland, and New York. Tom Atlee, a fellow marcher and founder of the Co-Intelligence Institute, says that he marks that day in the Manure warehouse as the birth of the Institute. And he much later wrote, in 1992, this is a quote, in 1992, I was browsing through Jerry Mander's book, In the Absence of the Sacred, when a quote leaped off the page. This is still Tom Atlee speaking. It was from Oren Lyons, faith keeper of the Turtle Clan of the Onondaga Iroquois, describing traditional tribal councils. He said, quote, we meet, this is a quote inside of a quote, we meet and just keep talking until there's nothing left but the obvious truth, end quote. And then Tom says, I recognized that we'd stumbled upon something that the Iroquois had known for hundreds of years, end quote. It doesn't seem like it should be that hard to just listen, right? But I struggle to do it over and over again. May we continue to stumble upon and apply this ancient and priceless human technology of genuine listening and sharing, keeping it close to heart as we weather the present storms. May it be so. Our closing music is number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Thank you, Kay. Off to one side of the muddy meadow of our next conflict is a malodorous metaphorical warehouse full of manure. Let us stop setting up our tent of self-righteousness and seek shelter in its smelly shadows. Let us find that lonely microphone of reconciliation and invite our opponents to speak into it. Let us listen, hearts open, and take turns speaking bravely while the storms of life rage around us. Let us be watchful for the treasures that may emerge from a palace of poop. Let us go and seek peace. Manure is optional. Prayer and reflection. Spirit of all encompassing love, deeper than our divisions, stronger than our strife, bigger than all battles. Let the abiding landscape of love shared in this space on Sunday mornings grow and spread to ground all our relations. We hold in our hearts the gratitude for activists and people with the courage to make a difference in the world. We grieve with those who are disappeared and family members of them. We exult in new people finding this community and making it stronger. Gratitude for those who show up on other days than Sunday to make the water work and everything else. For those with courage to take on dangerous humanitarian missions to express that love that we practice here on Sunday mornings. People who do what's necessary to advance science that helps all of us in various ways. We know that the joys and sorrows shared here echo in all human hearts, even those that we may fear or despise or distrust. Let us make space for it all with patience and curiosity, grounded in love for all that is. Amen. Go in peace, go in love, and go together.
So. Kind of like. Yeah.